really like dragonflies. You know, they swarm around the shop in the summertime, and they're neat. You know, they only have a life expectancy of 1 to 6 weeks after they come out. Now they can stay as a pupa for 5 years, but once the wings emerge, you know, they're only good for maybe 6 weeks. But they can fly forward, they can fly backwards, they can fly sideways. They've got eyes that can zero in a laser fashion on mosquitoes. They eat their weight in mosquitoes, multiple weights daily. So Nancy loves them because she hates mosquitoes. So anyway, I've always been enamored with dragonflies, and so tonight I'm going to turn a dragonfly. It's a simple spindle turning with a twist. It will be multi-axis. It will have ball and socket joints. I will be turning the eyes like a little egg and then turn them 90 degrees and contour it to the head such that they'll fit nicely on the head. And then I'll show you how I make the wings. Now, I'll set this one over on the table. That's out of a piece of pine. The wings are lace wood that I was able to profile and cut thin. And these had a ball and socket joint. It was sort of a prototype, so they didn't exactly come out like I wanted it. But you know, it's just a lot of fun to do. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to turn using pin jaws. That's the other nice thing about this demo is you don't need a lot of exotic equipment. Pin jaws, and with a little modification, will allow you to turn on different axes so that you can have the head and the body and then the tail along the very bottom edge. So it's not all in one straight line, give it a little more character. And then as I get ready to do the ball and socket joints in the body, in the thorax of the dragonfly, I mount it sideways on my lathe, and I use a very exotic method. I'll take the end of one of these pieces and I'll put it in here. I'll put a little taper on it and hot glue, and then I can stick the body up against the hot glue to hold it while I drill the hole, and size the hole and taper the hole on the inside. So not your standard spindle turn. But again, hopefully I can pull it off, and it's a lot of fun. This is bigger than I normally do, and I tried to pick a size that we could pick up on the camera. I've got several bodies here that you can kind of see the size and variety that you can get involved with as you go through it. So with that, let's see if we can turn a dragonfly. Gary makes me feel guilty. As I turn the head, you're really turning a sphere. So you get some practice doing that as part of this exercise. Now, if you were John Horn, you'd be doing this with a skew, but I'm not John Horn. This is just a neat tool. Guy by the name of Bergen Sorensen out of New Zealand. You know, it's a sphere turning jig, a manual sphere turning jig that allows you to get all the right proportions. So, what my diameter was, I don't know what my center is. I'm going to define the edges of this sphere. I'm working on the head first, and then I'll do the body, and then I'll flip it around, put my spacer in to do the tail. That's so that I can hold it when I turn it around. So it's been said that one of the most difficult things to turn is a sphere, because everybody knows what a sphere looks like. And if yours doesn't look like one, they know it. Is that better? I generally try to make the body, the thorax, about twice the length of the head. And they I find working with dry wood when I'm turning these is a whole lot easier. Because when I start to put the holes in for the sockets, if it's wet wood, as it dries, it really tightens up on the ball after it dries. Ask me how I know.
TV flicker down by my, down there.
Right there.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, little ball. Now I've got my head and my body. So now I'm going to back off on this and we'll begin to work on the tail, which will be offset. And I use a block that just offsets one side of the blank. Oh, gravity's not kind to an old man. So all this does is it will just offset. Almost screwed up. It will offset the piece such that when you turn the tail, it will be on the back side or the bottom side of the it's important. The thickness of the spacer is important because if you do it too thick, it can't be more than half of the diameter or half of the width of the board. Because if you do, then as you begin to turn it, it cuts too far into the back. And so when you begin to look at making the tail, you can see I've got a wobble up there. I make sure that when I'm doing this,
I leave a piece on the back so that I can have something for the tailstock to hold up to. Otherwise, as you're cutting that tail smaller and smaller, it wants to move on you. This is double the head, and generally I try to make the tail. I like the tails a little longer, so I tend to try to make it twice the distance of the head and the thorax, but at a minimum twice the length of the thorax, just to give it a nice tail. And really, you just get into a lot of preferences for what you want your piece to look like. I like to turn the tail and leave it. I still don't have it completely round yet. Leave it thick and then work up from the back to make it smaller and smaller as I work toward the head. As it gets so long, you begin to get vibration in there. So now what I'm going to do is taper the thorax. So then you begin to see where you've got the back of the thorax is raised relative to the front. Smooth that out. And you begin to get more of the shape to your dragonfly. Now we'll start thinning out that tail. as you're cutting the spindle, the long spindle, you try to have as little influence with your hand just to hold down on your tool rest and use the backhand to kind of push the cut like you're plowing a field so that you can make those light cuts. And this is one of those things when you try to get it on the first pass because you don't want to go back for that last cut. Because I have snapped the tail off on some. Yeah, I'd go ahead and sand it and do all of that. Yes, sir. Yeah, there are some that I have done with the little beads. Uh, as you do the beads, you add another degree of complexity because the beads get really thin. And you just got to make sure they don't snap off. Now, what you want to do is you want to keep as much mass as you can. So if you're going to do the beads on them, then you as you go down, then you do your bead each time. What we're going to deal with now is put the mouth on this thing to make it mosquito effective. It's centered on the axis, but because I've offset my piece, it's not centered on the original block. Yes. The nice thing about it is that the mouth is generally down along the same axis as the tail. So you only have to use your setting offset once. Uh, this one here is probably a quarter of the thickness of the blank that I started with. Ideally, I like to use about a half. Tends to, I think, give me a better shape, but because I was using a larger blank, so that at least you had a chance to see what I was doing. I couldn't open up my jaws big enough to get an offset much bigger than that. 1 inch. That's about a quarter. And normally I like to use, a 3/4 inch blank. And then I'll use a 3/8 offset. Now the rest of it I'm gonna have to get with sandpaper to smooth that out. Use my multi-tooth gouge here. So that gives me the basic shape of the Dragonfly. I'll dress this up with a sander. Shape the mouth. This one here, it's a record. And it's a Nova chuck. Most of my chucks are Nova. I then will take and sort of space out where I want my wings to go, leaving enough space between them such that the socket joints aren't imposing upon one another. And now I'm going to take and mount the Dragonfly vertically So nothing goes to waste. And I'll use a hot glue to mount the Dragonfly, where I can start to uh, do the socket joints. Get my dimple. Excuse me. And surprisingly, hot glue makes a very effective holding for I can line it back up. And I'm not going to do all of the sockets. But what I do, and I'll turn these in a moment.
I use maple because it's nice and hard. It's got good straight grain. And I can turn the ball on the end of that. And I'll turn all of these balls, I'll cut a section and I'll turn a ball and a mounting plate on each end. And then as I drill my holes, I can work to make sure that that ball fits snugly in the socket, and I'll mark it, forward left, forward right, and so that I know which one goes where. But to kind of give you a flavor, I'll let you pass this one around. So this one I've already cut the four sockets and made the four plates, the balls to go in there. Now, the challenge with these, and I'll tell you right now, I turned this out of wet wood. And so it's dried. Those balls are tight in there. So I tend to like to use dry wood when I do this. And when you do that, you get a ball and a socket, and it's a tight fit. And that is now your ball and your socket joint. And then I'll attach the wing to one of those. Not if you're working with dry wood in both cases, because they're both going to be about the same. Because of this demo, I'll pass this one around so you can kind of see. I turned this one out of a fresh piece of hackberry, and so it was wet when I turned it. Makes it fun to turn. It's a pain to do the sockets in there because it's wet. But you know, I was learning in this thing. So this is one where the wings mechanisms are there. Yeah, you take a little bit of acetone and dribble a little acetone, and the hot glue will just peel right off. So, you know, I'd worked out some through trial and error, you know, what size hole do you want for what size ball? And generally you want 2, maybe 0.003 of an inch difference between the hole that you drill into your socket and the ball, and then you undercut the hole to the size of the ball. So the collar on there gets me the depth, which is the diameter of the ball. So to start off with, that won't fit. All right. So what I'm going to do is hollow out, and then we'll slowly sand until we get the right size fit. And what I use is a little grinding burr, spherical burr. Point of caution, the tail whips around and it will hit you. Have that closer. And this is just a grinding burr that little diamond grinding burr that's again spherical, and it's slightly smaller than the ball that goes in there. And now it's just a trial and error process until you've got the ball at the right size. Nightmares. Well, I looked at a lot of ball and socket joints from different types of things and trying to zero in. The big key was trying to find the right ratio of the size of the ball to the size of the hole, the entry hole for the ball to go into. And you just keep working until you get to where you need to be. So and then I trim these off to put on the wings. So when I make the wings, I cut a profile. All right. And then I take a piece of painter's tape on the template and a piece of painter's tape on the veneer, and then a couple of 3 dots of super glue, and put the backs of the painter's tape together, and it holds it in place. You can get the painter's tape off a lot easier than you can double-sided tape. And then they're oversized, so I'll trim them close with a scroll saw, and then I'll trim them flush with a flush trim router bit, which is probably the easiest way to do them, because you only need two patterns, one for the upper wing, one for the lower wing, and you just do that on both sides of it. And then as I've cut these pieces, okay, I'll trim them off and sand them. I'll do one of those real quick. So this is just a repeat 4 times. So I'll take, these were like 3/4 thick hard maple that I cut up into some blanks, and you cut these blanks about 2 inches long, and you can do one ball at each end. You just flip it around. And I know about so I know what the diameter of the ball needs to be. So I'll turn this such that it's
Slightly bigger, but close.
so I took a screwdriver and the hole size is about 3/1000 larger than the diameter of this drill. So I took the screwdriver, heated it up red hot, let it cool, took all the temper out of it, drill my hole, ground the ends off, ground the bevel on the backside, heated it up again, red hot, dipped it in peanut oil to quench it, which made it super hard, cleaned it up, got all the scale off, and then put my flame back here on the back part of the screwdriver and then let it slowly turn blue. And when it turned blue, it had tempered, taken all the brittleness out, tempered the blade. And then so what I end up with is cut my bead. And then since I want a flat where I can attach it to the back of the wing, I'll cut it off with my saw. And then I can hold this piece up against my sander, get that nice and flat on the backside and the thickness that I want that goes on a wing. And then I'll make 4 of these as I get ready to do the sockets on the ball and socket joint. Theoretically, yes. This is a large ball and socket for what I would normally do. I made this one so that it was big enough so that people could see what was going on. Normally, I would have a much smaller ball. Yes, well, I haven't yet, but what I've been doing is turning them with a detail gouge up to now. But once I made the tool, I don't want to do the detail gouge anymore. That's work. And then of course I'll trim them so that they're not so much visible from the top as you go through. Now, the eyes, there's two ways I've done the eyes. One is I've just taken and drilled a hole and put a bead in the hole. You know, I'll make a bunch of beads of different sizes. But a dragonfly is not really spherical. It's sort of flat up against the head. So the way that I do the eyes is I'll take a piece of contrasting wood. It's about 3/4 the diameter of the head. And then it will be approximately 2.5 times the diameter of the blank. You turn your piece round, then you round off one end. And then I'll make this piece, as I make the eye, I'll make it elongated and tapered. And it's an egg shape. Now, to make it fit on the head, because the head of the dragonfly is spherical, and that's not spherical in the 90-degree axis. I'll use my fancy system to hold it. Because if you were to grip it with a chuck, it would put marks on the side of it. And what I'll do is I'll mount this horizontally on this piece with hot glue. and then I'll cut a curve, concave it to the diameter of the head. Now I put a slight cup in this piece that's mounted in the chuck so that that edge would fit in there. And my special tool to measure the concave is I can use that as a inch up on that. And then as you cut that spherical piece in there, then it'll fit right up against the eye of the head, and the eye will be more of a dragonfly eye. Didn't have enough glue on there. All right, so you've got the idea. So as you're turning, you know, you're constantly using your gauge to make sure that your concave matches the diameter, matches the sphere of the head, and then you glue it on. And there was one of them that went around that had one eye on it, where I'd already done that. Here. So that's how I do the eyes, so that you glue them on there. So, you know, you try to match the diameter of the cup to the diameter of the head, so that it'll just flush fit right up against it. And, you know, this tight bond, one we used for fast set. Oh, that stuff is fantastic. You can put that on there and hold it for a few seconds and then let it go, and then you're done. So that's how I do dragonflies. You know, the eyes, you know, it's a simple turning, but then by turning it 90 degrees to put the cup on there, really fits the head a lot nicer. Now, earlier models that I had done, I had just taken beads. I'd made beads and took a grinding tool and ground a cup in there and then planted the beads. But I really don't like the way that those, whereas this is more akin to a traditional dragonfly's eye. And then when you've done this in dry wood with the sockets and dry wood with the balls, then you get a nice fit that, you know, the wing would be mounted horizontally here. And so the wings are movable, and they don't come off. And the wings can be very, very thin, like I said, I've used veneer. I've cut veneer of, so if you've got a really highly figured veneer or a highly figured wood, they make nice wings as you go on there. Yeah. You get real figure to it. And these eyes were done the way that I'm talking about. That now those wings are not, they're not flexible. That was an earlier iteration of what I was doing. And really you're kind of whatever you want to do, you can make them all different sizes. You can see I've made some that are really small. And to John, was it you asked about the grooves, the little beads in there? Okay, it was Mike. Yeah, you can cut the beads in there. Just cut them as you go, because if you try to cut them after you've turned the tail, there's just too much movement, too much flex. You have to have light touch. And when you have neuropathy in your hands, it's hard to have a light touch. So, dragonflies, 4 wings, lots of mobility, 6 legs, but it can't walk. They can hold on to stuff, but they can't walk. They're strictly aerobatic. A lot of fun. And as you take your piece, then you can dye it, you can color it, you can put like the one Peter won last time, had a real glittery surface to it, which makes for a real striking piece. Dragonflies, simple spindle turning with a twist. with a twist.